Welcome back, dear and passionate whispers of Turkish Stars family. What a joy to have you here again, in this cozy corner where fame loosens its tie and love lets down its hair, where we listen closely to the heartbeat behind the spotlight. Today we're boarding a flight together to Riyadh, not for the glittering hotels or the glint of trophies, but for a revelation that turned a glamorous evening into a love story worth replaying. Prepare your hearts, and keep a tissue close, because what unfolded that night reshaped one of Turkey's most cherished romances. We're going to talk about Gökberk Demirci, the ever-gentle leading man, and the luminous Özge, and a single line that echoed like a vow in a quiet church. If you believe in love that withstands the noise, make sure you subscribe, tap the bell so you never miss a chapter, and consider joining our membership to keep this intimate circle thriving. Are you ready to hear what truly happened in that golden glow? Stay close, because on Whispers of Turkish Stars, the heart finds its voice. There are evenings that divide a life into before and after. For the charismatic and grounded Gökberk Demirci, that moment arrived beneath the icy strobe beams and suffocating glamour of a prestigious awards ceremony in Riyadh. When the applause faded and the glitter settled, days later in Istanbul he let down his guard in front of microphones and flashing cameras, and chose words so candid, so unvarnished, that they seemed to silence the city. He spoke of how the elegance and commanding grace of his partner, the breathtakingly poised Özge, as she stepped up to accept her award, didn't just captivate the room full of dignitaries, it reached into his ribs and squeezed, pushing his own heart back into rhythm. They were already known as a golden pair on any carpet they blessed with their steps, but that night, the joy of Özge's international recognition was only the overture. The crescendo was love made visible. Let's rewind the reel to that decisive moment. The curtain parted, the music held its breath, and Özge crossed the stage like a promise kept. Eyewitnesses swear time lost its footing. She wore her confidence like a perfectly tailored silk. Her presence was luminous, controlled, and yet somehow tender. Photographers wrestled for angles, arms raised in a staccato of shutters, but one gaze needed no lens. It was Gökberk's, anchored to her as though a thread from his chest tied to hers. He did not look like a man standing beside a star merely to complete a picture, he looked like someone remembering, with aching clarity, why he fell in the first place. Istanbul, days later. Journalists, ravenous for the moment behind the moment, asked the obvious question: what went through your mind when you saw her up there? The way Gökberk's face softened was its own answer. His eyes found a gentler light, his tone dipped into something private, and after a breath that said more than words, he let it out like a line improvised by the bravest version of himself. That night I realized I couldn't let Özge go. The sentence flew across the city like the first bird at dawn. It was both an admission and a shield, both the headline and the quiet story beneath it. But he didn't stop at romance. He painted a portrait that went deeper than beauty in dress. He spoke about Özge's calm resilience, the discipline that sharpens artistry, the silent work that no one posts but which shines anyway when the lights rise. He described standing in the wings, overflowing with pride, witnessing a triumph that wasn't luck, but the harvest of years of stubborn, sleepless care. And then he said the part that thrilled even the most cynical bystander: at that moment, I felt an irresistible need to stand with her again, to belong to her light. Those were the words that transformed gossip into a story you tell your best friend at midnight. Here at Whispers of Turkish Stars, our analysts watched the ceremony not as a random glittering date on a calendar but as a hinge in the narrative of their bond. The photos that spilled onto social media, the whispers in hallways, the videos replayed frame by frame by adoring fans all sang the same refrain: chemistry rekindled, connection clarified. And a single clip went viral more than any standing ovation: the way he looked at her when she held the award. The internet baptized it with a name: the look of pride. Whispers in the industry say that after the ceremony, in the shelter of friendly homes and off-limits lounges, he was just as open with those closest to him. He reportedly shared that walking beside Özge through the rising tide of her success felt like the greatest honor of his life, and that what they had was no fragile flame but a fire banked against the wind. When asked about these murmurs, Özge answered not with a speech but with the faintest, most telling smile, the kind that bridges the public stage and the private heart. People present that night insist her eyes glistened for a second before she redirected attention back to her craft, gracious as ever. Riyadh became more than a city on their itinerary. It became a bookmark in their shared story. That line, "that night I realized I couldn't let Özge go," started circulating on fan pages, quoted beneath slow-motion clips, celebrated in captions that sounded like prayers. And then came the speculation that always follows a declaration so bold. Are we on the cusp of a proposal? Is a ring waiting in the wings, patient like a final cue? We will hold that question lightly for a moment, and instead ask you, our family, can professional glories bolster love, or do they sometimes sow a quiet jealousy? In Gökberk's case, admiration seems to be the wind at the sail. Tell us in the comments what you believe. Does success sharpen devotion, or test it? Let's step behind the curtain where the cameras rarely go. Those near the couple say that before the ceremony, when the intensity of the evening pressed like a velvet weight on shoulders, Gökberk became Özge's calm anchor. While stylists fussed and makeup brushes danced, he offered stillness. He reminded her of the hours no one sees, of the threads of character she had woven into her work. And then, just before she walked toward the stage, he took her hand, firm, warm, confident, and told her, "You deserve this more than anyone." It was a small sentence in a noisy night, but it glowed. Those who noticed swear they felt the temperature of the room change. Backstage after the applause, the tenderness turned cinematic. As she stepped down, still shining under the echo of her name, he reached her first. Witnesses recall his eyes swimming with emotion, a brave man refusing to blink it away. He drew her into a hug that said what public statements cannot: "I see you, I know what it took, I'm here." He repeated the simplest phrase again and again, like counting beads on a rosary: "I'm so proud of you." These were not moments designed for headlines, but intimacy has a way of leaking into the world when it burns bright. In later answers, Gökberk didn't only speak as a partner in love, he also spoke as a colleague who respects the grind. He talked about watching Özge evolve, from a woman who stunned with presence into an artist who commands with soul. With a smile you could hear in his voice, he said what drew a hush across the room: "She was always extraordinarily beautiful, but now she is a force of nature." That line traveled swiftly because it held no envy, just awe. Since that night, those close to them say the pair has been fiercely intentional about time together. We all know their schedules are brutal: sets that chew up daylight, flights that blur time zones, scripts that demand silence and focus. Yet in the scenes between commitments, they've carved out mornings for coffee and evenings for unhurried walks. Behind the scenes, it's often repeated that not once has Gökberk bristled at the surge of international attention cascading toward Özge after her award. If anything, he cheers the loudest, reposts the fastest, and stands back just enough for her to occupy the whole frame. In a landscape where ego often flexes harder than tenderness, his steadiness feels like a breath of spring. Naturally, such an unguarded declaration ignited endless guesses about what comes next. Could this be the prelude to a ring revealed under city lights? Is a family conversation unfolding quietly while the world squints at clues in their jewelry and captions? The couple remains elegantly silent, as is their way, but one emphasis rings clear in every syllable that left his lips: "I can't give up." That's not a fad, not a crush masquerading as something sturdier. It's a commitment that sounds like it's already made, whether or not a date has been circled. As the afterglow of that Riyadh evening continues to warm our screens, the conversation around them has shifted. Yes, they remain fixtures of our celebrity landscape, but the tone carries more reverence now, more softness. It seems the night was never just about the medal in Özge's hands, it was about a cord pulled taut between two people who know how to hold on. And here at Whispers of Turkish Stars, we close this chapter with gratitude for a lesson tucked inside a spectacle. Real love does not shrink in the shadow of success, it throws light at it. It doesn't tally applause, it joins in. Before we say goodbye, tell us your story. What's the most romantic gesture you've given or received? Do you think Gökberk and Özge deserve the title couple of the year, or has this night simply reminded us why they already are? Drop your thoughts below, I read every word you share. If this story stirred something in you, give it a big thumbs up, subscribe to Whispers of Turkish Stars for more secrets told softly, and consider becoming a member to step even closer into our circle. Thank you for believing in love, for celebrating art, and for keeping this community tender. Until the next story, where the lights may be brighter, but the truth will be just as gentle. Now, if you listen carefully, you notice that everything began not with a grand speech, but with a look. That look, steady, unashamed, saturated with pride, has a way of traveling further than the event itself. People saved it to their phones, replayed it frame by frame, sending it to friends with little captions like "This is how you look at your person." And perhaps that's why his confession landed like it did in Istanbul. He wasn't rewriting history, he was simply saying out loud what the whole world had already seen written across his face. In private circles, some recall that the days leading up to the ceremony were tense with logistics and expectations. Yet the rhythm between them never faltered. They pressed their foreheads together before schedules tore them apart for fittings and rehearsals. They leaned on old jokes. They turned up the song that always makes them smile. And when the final rehearsal threatened to spill over into fatigue, he insisted on a pause, a sip of water, a breath. It is a small, ordinary kind of care that often precedes extraordinary moments. Another detail floated to our ears from a source usually immune to sentimentality. As Özge adjusted the last clasp on her gown, she glanced at her reflection for one heartbeat too long, the way artists do when they're weighing everything at once. Gökberk crossed the room, caught the doubt before it could get loud, and said softly, "I know what tonight will mean. Remember who you are." And then he stepped back, letting her walk into her own light. When the curtain did rise and the applause surged, it felt, to those who know them, like a fulfillment more than a surprise. After the ceremony, when the corridors buzzed and the champagne breathed tiny galaxies in its glass, a pocket of stillness formed around them. He kept his distance from the chaos just long enough to hand her a small note. Rumor says it was scribbled on a folded program, ink smudged, words neat. No one knows precisely what it said, but the way her shoulders softened tells you everything. Bless the humble note, the quiet gesture in rooms built for thunder. There is a reason, dear friends, why stories like this endure. We long to watch beautiful people do beautiful work, yes, but even more we long to see them protect what matters from the madness that surrounds them. When a man as admired as Gökberk stands in a room humming with ego and says without flinching that the shine next to him makes him more himself, it gives the rest of us permission to root for each other, to be unafraid of celebrating the ones we love. So we will keep our eyes open for the next chapter. Maybe it will be a whisper that becomes a headline, or a headline that chooses to remain a whisper. Maybe it will be another red carpet where his gaze tells on him again, or a quiet morning shared with the world only through a single, uncaptioned photo. Whatever comes, we'll be here, listening to the softest truths in the loudest rooms, and bringing them to you, faithfully, gently, right here on Whispers of Turkish Stars. Until then, carry this image with you, two hands finding each other just off stage, two hearts stepping into the same light, one sentence knitting the moment together. That night I realized I couldn't let Özge go. Perhaps that's the real award worth keeping on a shelf. Words that, once spoken, make everything that follows braver, kinder, and more true.